because unfortunately I do have a hard stop at the bottom of the hour, just going from call to call these days, just like so many of us. So first of all, I'd like to thank you all so much for joining the call and for joining as a member of one of the two nominating committees. I did put out some information. I believe that Kathy should have sent that out. It's essentially a memo that describes what we're looking to try to accomplish. They're essentially the president's, it's the president's guidance for our nominating committees. I apologize on the timing of this for a variety of miscommunication reasons. This meeting should have occurred probably about a month ago, and unfortunately that did not happen, but it is what it is. We are still in a good place from a schedule perspective. My goal was to have this discussion and have you all come together in advance of receiving any of the nominations so we can have a truly unbiased view. So I do ask that that you do try to the extent that you can, try to take a really unbiased view and really work on what we think the society needs from the perspective of from a holistic perspective, as opposed to does each individual candidate really fit within within those needs. So I'm just going to kind of take a look. If it's been a little while since you've read the president's guidance, I'll kind of take you through a little walkthrough on it. Of course, just to start, I already thanked you all for joining. Thank you so much. We're really at an important phase, not only in our centennial, but also with our strategic plan. And of course, our strategic plan was written before 2020. 2020 has caused so much change. And so that's where I think we really need to determine what we need in our next crop of leaders. I'd really like for the two committees, of course, if you're not familiar, we have the committee for the president-elect, and then the committee for the officers, being the board of directors and the vice presidents. I'd like you all to determine really at a high level the challenges that you see for SAME, given everything that's happened this year, all this change. And then I'd also like you to think in very broad terms about the types of leaders we need to meet those challenges. So, I included in the memo some things that have gone on. We've had flat membership for a few years. So, you might decide, for example, that growing membership, and not just membership, but really that engaged, active membership, maybe you as a committee, joint committee, determine that that's what's most important to SAME's future. So then what leadership characteristics would really indicate that our candidates would be able to make that kind of an impact? You may decide that there's another challenge that we need to face. I know we've had this diversity and inclusion working group come forward with their report. Maybe you feel like that's something that really needs to be addressed as we move forward. So what leadership characteristics are important in that regard? So I'd ask that you start out by coming up with what you think the challenges are that you think are really important to SAME's future. You're welcome to touch base with the national leadership team, any other resources that you would like to have. And, clearly we really value your perspective. You were all selected for very intentional reasons. You represent a cross-section of society in many regards. We've got people who are post-presidents, who are members of the board of directors, national leaders. And so, the main difference between the two nominating committees is really more of a timing issue, because we look at the elected directors as being an important source of candidates for future roles, for president, for vice president, but also for RVPs, for communities of interest, leaders, and all that. And since the logic here really applies to both committees, I thought it would be valuable for both to work together. So again, my apologies. The intent was for all of these discussions to have occurred throughout November prior to receiving the nominations, but we still do have plenty of time. But similarly, same thought process for president and vice president. So the candidates for those roles were asked to give a 2-minute video that, based on my assessment of our society's implementation of the strategic plan and the challenges facing our society, I feel that I'm the right person to lead SAME in this point in time because. And they were intended to provide their thoughts there. So now remember, the elected directors do not need to provide a video with their nomination packet, but just keep that in mind that these are some of the thoughts that we have. So again, once we have that consensus drawn from the discussion and all that, I ask that you then move to the next phase, which is to assess their potential to meet the leadership characteristics that you deem are most impactful. And in the past, I think we may have at times, not always, but we may have at times kind of had more of a score sheet mentality. What I mean by that is I've heard in the course of recruiting different people for different roles, oh, well, I could never be president because I don't have X, or I was told that I'm not a good candidate because of Y. So rather than have that sort of like check the box, these are the specific licenses or characteristics or whatever else that we need people to have, I ask that you all as nominating committees really assess these nominees from a whole person concept. So what do they bring to the position? What extent do they bring it to the position that meets the leadership needs that will be necessary to lead our society into our next century? So, I included kind of a pie chart, if you will, of this whole person concept. This is in no way all inclusive. There are probably things on this list that you don't think are important. There are some things that you think are important that should bump others off. There may be more pieces of the pie. But my thought here is that once you determine what those pie slices should be, then you view people based on, to what extent do they meet them, and, how important are those various characteristics. So the only written requirement to be president of SAME is to be a fellow. There is no other written requirement. So I will pause there, having gone through an overview of my president's guidance, and see what thoughts, questions, discussion, feedback you all have. That's a lot of silence. Neil, did you have a question or a thought?
No, I was just on. Okay, everybody. So I guess for my team on the elected directors, we're going to meet on Thursday, and I think, Kathy, we've now given everybody access to those files. Is that correct? We have not?
No, we're waiting to do that until after this meeting.
Okay, so we're going to push out today the nomination files of all the people for elected director, and likewise, I'm sure you're going to push out all the files and the videos for the president-elect. So for my team on elected directors, we're going to get together on Thursday and just kind of review who the candidates are, talk about the process, have this conversation that Heather talked about. And originally we were trying to have everything wrapped up Thursday. I think 1 or 2 weeks hence we'll have it all squared away. So
yeah, let me address
a couple.
Neil, if I could, let me address a couple of points there. So one is, yes, the time frame is going to have to be pushed out. And I would, as much as I love the fact that you jumped on it and you plan to have it done by the end of this week. I don't think that the process that I'm asking you all to go through is going to be supportive of that. Realistically, the nominating procedures say that you all convene the 1st of March. So we have time. I don't want to take till the 1st of March. I do want to make sure that we go through this process in the way that I had spelled out. And the intent of that is to go through and determine as a joint committee, without looking at any of the nominations, what is it that you think are the challenges and what are the leadership characteristics that are required. So my request is that before you even review the packages or review the names, now I'm sure some names have kind of been, not leaked out, but people talk and that's just fine. There's nothing against that. But to really convene first as a joint committee coming together before you split apart, what are the challenges and what are the types of leadership characteristics we need? So I envision, given the holidays and all the rest, Neil, I mean, you may not be able to have, it may not be time to review the packages until after the holidays. Please don't feel the need to work on this over the holiday break. It can wait. I would rather do it right than do it fast.
Yeah, Heather,
I appreciate that.
Yeah, let me add a couple of thoughts for everybody to kind of reinforce Heather's guidance. First of all, I've been at this for a few years now, and way back when John Mogi was the president, the first thing that we did is we decided that we needed to have a nominating process that was as even-handed as we could be, that eliminated the smoke-filled room, eliminated the good old boy network. We've got that. Let me tell you, that system has been in place now for 6 years. What Heather has done is taken it to another level. So let me just to reinforce what she just said about the time frame. Let me just work it backwards for you, just to make sure you understand very quickly the process. So the actual deadline is April 15th is when we have to finish the online voting in order to get it done in time for the May board to verify the candidates, okay, or whoever was selected. So if you backward plan from April 15th, you got plenty of time. So the Heather has added here, I think, is powerful. And that's a joint discussion with all of the folks on this call here to answer the question that she put in front of you. And it's a serious question. What are the challenges and what are the leadership characteristics to meet that? And kind of get a common view of that before you look at any of the candidates. And then go look at the candidates. And then the other process piece is just to make sure you understand my role. When we created this process several years ago, you know, as the executive director, I've got no role in this except for one thing. So as you all know, you have a couple of my directors who are there for administrative support to each of the nominating committees. And keep in mind, they are nominating committees, not selection committees. So the directors that I have supporting the chairs of the committees are there for administrative support only. They're not voting members. They don't offer their opinion, zero. Here's where I fit. If they recognize something going on in the discussion that is a foul, in other words, a chair trying to push one person over another, or something that is really just not appropriate, the people that I have sitting there pick the phone up and call me and say, wait a minute, we've got a foul here. I'll pick the phone up and call the president and say, I think you need to talk to the chair of this committee because there may be a problem. That's the only role I play, is an oversight function to help the president.
Joe, if I could just intercede here, I don't want to give anybody the impression that we anticipate that that's going to be an issue. I mean, that is a fail-safe, if you will, if that happens. But we really trust you all, and we don't anticipate that that's going to be effective.
Right. So I just want to make sure people understand that you all are the ones making the selections. And I was giving you all that process just to underscore the importance of having this first discussion first. And then in terms of the nominating committees, this is kind of what's unfolded over time. We've had as many as 18 candidates for elected director. The nominating committee came back and recommended 8. And then those 8 go up for a vote to the general membership. We've never had more than 1,100 of the members actually vote when we open the online voting. But that is how the elected directors over the last several years have actually been selected. You guys nominate them, and then the membership selects them. With the president-elect, because there are so few members who actually vote, every year the trend has been, and the decision has been, that the nominating committee for president-elect is actually a selection committee. Yes, we do put the name of the president-elect or the nominated person in the TME to be voted on, but there's only one choice. So I just want to make sure that you all understood a couple of those nuances on nominating versus selecting and the way it's played out, driven primarily by the number of, or the lack of members who actually vote. But the elected director piece has actually worked out fairly well with the online member voting. So that I just want to give you kind of that overview that's the process. Again, to reinforce the fact that Heather just made, the point she made, that there's plenty of time because it's really tied to the April TME and then also the online voting and the May board. So you've got plenty of time to do that front end piece that she's added this year that I think is a real powerful addition to what we've done in the past. That's all I wanted to add, Heather, just to make sure that there was a little context to what you've created this year.
Sure.
Okay, so Heather, so my question is simple then. Right now, my team had a meeting scheduled for this week. Doesn't sound like that should go. Sounds like Buddy and I should get the whole crew together with staff support, find a better time, and have that first larger discussion. And then we'll subsequently split out into the 2 committees later. So
yep.
prior scheduled meeting then doesn't have to take place, and our time, our time frame is radically different from what I understood it to be. So can we logistically just do that? Kathy and whoever, just cancel those meetings and let's reschedule. Russ is saying something.
Yeah, Neil, I guess alternately, if you've got, most or all of your folks ready to talk on later this week, and Buddy's got most or all his folks ready to talk next week, do we want to use that opportunity as kind of the two subcommittees to work on that pie chart, and then schedule a meeting for those two groups to come together and, and put it all together? I guess I'm just trying to think of the best way to facilitate conversation. I don't want to belabor anybody's time, but if we're committed to those two existing meetings, I think we can maybe still have those and just change the objective of those meetings. Just a thought.
Heather, we've got a meeting on Monday with the president-elect and VP, and with Niels on Thursday. Russell has a good point. Coming together and getting some ideas together, then we can have the joint meeting. I think it'd be more useful than having the joint meeting and spend the first half hour trying to figure out how we want to do the first meeting.
Yeah, I defer, Buddy, to you and to Neil on that, but yeah, that would be my recommendation, would be to take the time that you already have and to get moving on those challenges and leadership qualities.
Yeah, and it allows people to have an idea of what are the top 3 or 4 things that each one of these committees comes up with that say are important, they think are important. Then we can look at it collectively to find what those important things are. And they may be the same, oddly enough. We may think the same, but doing that as a selected group, not talking about people, not looking at anything, but really following your guidance, and then we come together and have a meeting. It may be more fruitful that way.
Yeah, and you may
I think they call that a bicameral chamber. I'm not sure where I got that idea from, but.
And you all may choose, you may want to meet with the NLT to see if we have any input, although you clearly have 2 members of the NLT here, and Buddy and Anil. But I think something else to consider in the back of your heads is to look at the NLT almost from a portfolio approach as well. So we already know who the national president will be next year. That's Mark. And we know that Mark has certain, skills and qualifications and qualities and the like. And so, you could look at it as a balance between the president-elect and, and Mark. Are there any things that you think that, that he might need some additional assistance with, or anything that, that would be help, or maybe for the president-elect that maybe Mark could supplement with. So looking at the NLT from a portfolio approach is another just thought to keep in the back of your mind. What makes it a little bit challenging is that we have so many, vice presidents to consider. We have at least 2, and, we'll have to see who was nominated, but, we may end up, let's say, if we end up having a president-elect come from the vice president pool, then we could potentially even have 3 vice presidents that would have to be selected. So it's all, and same thing from the perspective, if we have any elected directors, or if you have any elected directors that get fleeted up to vice president, we would have that be impacted as well. Does that make sense?
So initially, we'll continue. If it's okay, we'll have Neil have his meeting on Thursday. Well, I'll have a meeting with our group on Monday, and we'll take maybe Kathy. It would be the best if you're the collective scheduler for this collective meeting, as opposed to Stephen and Ann figuring out which one does it. But the key here was, would we have space in time, our schedules, to have one more meeting, say, before the 18th? That may be, after next week or at the end of next week. We can send out a calendar and see what might match for us as we go into that week before everyone pretty well shuts down for 2 weeks around the Christmas time. If just hold your hands up or do something. If you're going to be in your office, available not only next week but the following week, say till Wednesday. I'll use that. With that, everyone somewhere available and not going on trips before then. So we'll try to work something in the the latter part of next week all the way into mid the following week to see if we can have the joint meeting. And the reason I want to do is just get it moving to that point. Then we can spend some time with our understanding of what's important and in our leisure over the Christmas time, be able to look at people, look back at videos for some, read them more than once, and just think that over. So when we start coming back together as individual committees, we've had time to spend some time with each one of these nominees. So we do justice to each one of them and truly do justice to the society. That sound like it would work?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. That's our plan so far, Heather. What do we think as far as other items?
As far as the other,
Any other items?
oh, any other, no other items? Just wanted to thank you. And, you know, if we decide that this kind of process of convening to determine the leadership, the challenges and the leadership characteristics is a good way to go, then, you know, we can ask Mark, or we can suggest it to Mark to do in the future for next year and get it scheduled a little earlier in the year. So again, the timing didn't work out quite right, but it's fine. We still have plenty of time, but apologies for not getting this initial meeting scheduled earlier.
Yeah. And our alternates, Matt and Angie, I want you to be invited to everything, if that's okay with you. You have the time, please, we'd love to have you along. And you know, it gives trained people too, if you aren't a voting member, just making sure all of us can go along on this adventure, because it's terribly important as we look in the coming years. When you start looking at the vice president or president-elect and those people out there, oddly enough, that person or the person after them is going to be putting together the 2030 plan. And so you really have to start thinking, what's our plan now? What are we coming out of now? What do we need for leadership now? And then actually that one's going to put together the people who do the 2030 plan. So it's a bigger picture than you think about sometimes.
All right, anything else from anyone?
Good.
If not, thank you very much. I look forward to hearing what you all have to say. So I'm looking to Buddy and to Neil to let us know what it was from a challenges and a leadership potential or leadership characteristics perspective. I'm looking forward to hearing what the committees come up with.
Excellent. After we come together, we'll get back with you, Heather, let you know where we're going. And unless you'd like to sit in whenever, you'll know when the meeting is. And if you'd like to sit in on any part of it, latter half of it or something like that, that's fine too.
Okay, thanks for letting me know.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Well done. Good job.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
I'll call you, Neil.